everyone. So today we're going to be talking about what the benefits are to practicing Kung Fu. What can we really derive from practicing? And if you look at a lot of my videos from the past, you'll see I do explain some techniques in theory, but sometimes it's wrapped into this context of negativity in that, like, I'll explain how I was taught or how I've seen other people practice it and why I believe it's wrong and how to do it a better way. However, that shouldn't discount relevant history and the general notion of the practice, right? Because it comes down to it really being a practitioner versus the practice. What really defines a style, right? And I'm going to go back to a system like Aikido, right? You see a lot of dudes practicing Aikido and you see some applications and it looks like they're kind of dancing and very flowy and flipping around and it looks theatrical. Is the problem the practice or is the problem the people practicing Aikido? Very few times, and it's not coming to me who, but there have been times where I'll see somebody practicing Aikido or explaining Aikido techniques, and it's not in that weird, flowy, dance-like kind of way. It actually looks functional, and its theory is actually a lot more similar to, like, Tai Chi. So the issue that I've come to understand, not really that I've come to understand because I've always understood it, is that the system, the styles, they're never the problem, or rarely ever the problem. The problem is usually the people. And we have to learn to separate the McDojo type masters, or perhaps McMasters, if you will, and people that actually understand what they're doing and are open and honest about how, why, and what they're doing. So with that said, let's get into it. So with Kung Fu, with martial arts in general, it comes down to self-defense, right? This is one of the overarching things where people will argue and say, yes, this is useless, this is not useless. Kung Fu definitely has a lot of good techniques, and I think it's a great martial art to learn, self-defense. However, I would argue that it's not necessarily the best martial art to learn sports, or if there's like an immediate need, because Kung Fu is such a poetic practice, and it is a beautiful art form, that it takes a very long time to get good at fighting because we're working on so many other things. Learning forms, understanding theory, history, all of it. And that's part of what I love about the practice, but I've also never been interested in becoming a fighter. Do I want to learn how to use self-defense? Yes. Which is why my videos are structured the way that they are, because I believe that you can have this artistic component and couple it with the functional side. And if I wanted to study dance, I would go and study dance. But I want to learn martial arts for art and for self-defense. So outside of being able to drill techniques and explain them and say, hey, look, that's what this is for, that's what this is for, we can take a look at other martial arts and their roots and see where those techniques come from. And many times, particularly East Asian martial arts, those techniques come from Kung Fu. We take a look at karate. Karate has direct lines from White Crane. And I don't know if it's every branch of karate, but I believe the form is called Samjin, a White Crane form that the karate guys have almost an exact same replica of. The White Crane is a little bit more flowy and a little bit more round, I guess you would say, where the karate version is a lot more heavy and square. And that's not to say one is wrong and one is right, but they both communicate different understandings of the same kind of movement, right? The karate guys take one approach, the White Crane people took another approach. It also goes to show the evolution of the martial art. Perhaps the karate guys did not see it the same way. They said, yes, these techniques are viable, but it's better if we practice it this way. And that's how they chose to develop it. Another good martial art to kind of take a look at, and I haven't done too much research on this one, is Taekwondo. if I'm not mistaken, some styles of Taekwondo have a direct line to some Northern Shaolin styles. And you can see that in the fact that they have a lot of kicking. And Northern Shaolin, Boxulam in specific, is kind of well known for its kicking techniques. Granted, I'll argue that a lot of the kicks used are more stretching exercises, like the stretch kicks and the crescent kicks. But that could also be a bias on my part because I'm not too fond of those kinds of kicks for sparring. But a lot, side kicks, roundhouses, hook kicks, spinning hook kicks, jumping side kicks, all of that stuff derives from Kung Fu tornado kicks. And they just expanded on it in their own way or relative to what happened in history and what they had to do. But the root is still there. Kung Fu is debatably the father of East Asian martial arts. And I say the father specifically because the grandfather would be that martial art that originated in India. Outside of historical context, we can also see that a punch is a punch and a kick is a kick, right? A lot of the way that we drill is the same way a lot of karate people drill. The way we practice our side kicks is the same way any martial arts should practice their side kick. Roundhouse. We might name things differently. Like for me, a roundhouse is a kick with like the shoelace area of the foot. A side kick is with the blade of the foot. Some people might call it differently. A hook kick is with the heel coming out from the side, right? So we might name things differently, but the techniques are still there nonetheless. If you really take a look at some of the Kung Fu forms, you're going to see that there are movements that don't make sense as strikes and movements that just look a little obscure, kind of like these movements here, or even like these circles that are more takedowns and throws and things of that nature. So you really have to have a more open mind when it comes to looking at this kind of stuff, and hopefully you don't have to, meaning that your Sifu, your coach, your teacher, however you call them, has the capacity to teach and explain how these movements are performed. I didn't have that luxury for a long time, so my understanding on certain things is a little broken, and I kind of have to piece that puzzle together by myself. But with a good Sifu and a good teacher, you shouldn't have a puzzle to piece together. You should have a artwork to interpret, right? These are the techniques, these are the applications. How you choose to interpret it and use it is up to you. You are given the tools, now you sharpen them. Another thing, and this will be the last point on this self-defense component, is that Kung Fu was structured with self-defense in mind, not sport, right? So, and I'm not going to go into the tangent about killing techniques and all of that stuff. Because at the end of the day, your bread and butter is going to be your bread and butter. If I practice this reverse punch more than I practice cracking somebody's neck, this reverse punch is going to be a lot more valuable. What I mean is that a lot of the training in Kung Fu, a lot of the movement is used to build reaction, right? Some of the training exercises might not look very smart, but it's about building reaction time. It's about building like mental toughness and fortitude and a sense of confidence. And sometimes you see that confidence expressed a little egotistically in that it's like, yes, I can conquer the world. But no, it's not about being able to iron smack somebody. It's more about having the confidence to respond. If I am walking and somebody accosts me trying to mug me, if I don't have any type of confidence, it doesn't matter how many forms I know, it doesn't matter how many techniques I have, it doesn't matter what skill set I learned. If I don't have the confidence to use it, it might as well go out the window. But if I'm, doing these training exercises and I'm feeling strong and I feel my body overcoming these obstacles, these odd training drills that don't seem to have a function in fighting are tools that are used to build your brain, to feel strong, to be mentally tough. And there are other ways to do it, right? Sitting in a horse stance, lifting weights, all that kind of stuff does help you to build that mental toughness because you're consistently overcoming obstacles. However, I think that when you apply obstacles that relate to the martial art, it helps you to build that confidence, particularly with self-defense. because you're conditioning your body to understand that you're essentially building competence in that arena. And again, with great power comes great responsibility. So you also have to be very realistic with yourself and understand that, yes, just because you practice 3-star blocking or you're doing the iron palm training and all that stuff to build a stronger body, it doesn't mean that you have good technique. It doesn't mean that you should even respond to somebody trying to mug you in an aggressive way, right? Sometimes the best thing and the smartest thing to do is to comply, comply, comply until you can. Okay, moving on. Kung Fu is a great form of exercise, right? It's a great form of community. It's a great form of socialization. It's a great form of art. It can help to build people in a lot more ways than you would think. And this also draws back to, like, with great power comes great responsibility, because we can see what building a community can do for the worst, right? If you take a look at a few videos ago, you can see my story, and the community that was built for me was manipulative and kind of, I guess one could say, toxic. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can still form a community. You can still have a student base. You can still treat your students like your family in that sense, right? You can have a special team where people are close knit and work together consistently. You can build that camaraderie together and still have a safe place, right? The weight of it all should not fall onto one person, and nor should it be a tyrannical reign, so to speak. Your student body should feel like they have a voice. Your peers should be happy to be there. The instructors should be well compensated. Their feedback should be valued. And nobody should be manipulated to be doing anything that they truly do not want to do. If they want to be there, they should want to be there. If they don't, they should not ever feel guilted into staying. You know? So there's a way to build a healthy community within the martial arts, within Kung Fu specifically. And that would be to be all inclusive, to be all understanding, and not all understanding that I know everything, but in understanding that everybody's different, everybody has different wants and needs, and as an instructor, as a facilitator of this kind of community, it's our responsibility to make sure that our school operates as a safe space to grow, learn, and adapt and become better people. And also touching up on building community, another benefit of Kung Fu is that it can be really good for people with mental health issues. And mental health being depression, anxiety, stress, things like that. Dealing with anger, dealing with anxiety. All of those things are obstacles that we can learn to conquer. And as somebody that has generalized anxiety, generalized depression, we know that it is not a here, do this and your problems are gone. It's a process, and we're not going to walk out of it feeling like, oh, my mental illness is gone, I feel great now. No. But we can use it as a tool in our arsenal to help us overcome these obstacles. When I'm feeling depressed, when I'm feeling anxious, I should be able to resort to my Kung Fu. And that, you know what, I'm feeling anxious, let's get some movement in, let's do something that's going to help my body feel at ease to work out this feeling. Not to repress this feeling, but to process it and let it flow. If I'm dealing with stress, same kind of deal, right? I'm feeling stressed out, I need a way to let it go, I need a way to de-stress. And sometimes we might need to hit the heavy bag, sometimes we practice our forms, sometimes it's about just sitting down and meditating. Kung Fu has so many tools that people can use to better the quality of their mental health. I would argue that if we take certain exercises, if we do an in-depth look at our curriculum, our repertoire, our arsenal, if you will, we can intentionally use exercises to de-escalate somebody who is in a heightened state of feeling. And what I mean by that is, let's take like a dynamic tension exercise, right? When we feel anger, when we feel tense, we feel like we're boiling, right? We might feel some heat. We might feel our body physically tensing up. We might feel our jaw clench. We have to let that go. And we can't let that go by bottling it up and putting it to the side and saying, okay, I'm good now. We have to find a way to let that out. So what we can do is practice something like a dynamic tension exercise. So we can breathe in and breathe out and tense everything, and then relax, right? So taking that concept, but mentally applying it to, okay, this is what I'm going to use to reduce this feeling, to express this feeling, to release this feeling, to let it pass. So we take these tools and repurpose them, right? This exercise now is not about building strength or learning to control breath. It's about learning to control my anger, learning to de-stress, learning to process these feelings in a different way, and perhaps a healthier way, because these movements, these techniques can act as a form of differential reinforcement, right? If I'm doing these breathing techniques when I'm feeling angry, it is an alternative to more destructive patterns, to yelling at home, to throwing things, to punching a hole in the wall, to self-injury. If I'm training, if I'm intentionally training to overcome a emotional stressor, it is incompatible with maladaptive behavior. And there is a little bit of leeway here in that too much of one thing can become maladaptive, right? If I'm reliant too much on my kung fu, or if I'm using my kung fu to repress my feeling, then it can become problematic. So for anyone trying to look into using their kung fu intentionally, and why I'm so hell-bent on using the word intention here is because these things can work without intent, right? Some people go to boxing classes and just work on the heavy bag, and that becomes their way to release stress, release anger. Imagine if we did that by choice, though, right? You're just going to boxing class maybe because you want to go to boxing class, right? But if we take into account our mental health and what we're feeling and how we're feeling, and we expand our tools with intent, saying, I am going to use this for this set purpose, then it becomes a whole new realm for growth. And I challenge you to explore that within your own practice, right? As karate people, as taekwondo people, Thai fighters, boxers, Tai Chi people, Qigong practitioners. What can you do to gear your practice to suit a specific need that you have, right? Outside the realm of fighting, especially for those of us that are MMA fighters or boxers, kickboxers, jiu-jitsu guys. How can you repurpose that practice to suit another ailment, to help you overcome an obstacle? And I believe that it shouldn't just happen. And it's beautiful if it does, but we can use our passion as a tool for so much more than what's on the surface release, right? I'm not trying to run from my feelings and hide into my practice. I'm trying to run into my practice to challenge these feelings, to overcome these feelings. So your intention for doing things can truly change the long-term outcome. And for a long time, I do believe that because of my history, both in the martial arts school and otherwise. I used this practice to hide from my feelings, to run away from all of these scary and big and unhealthy feelings that were just too much to deal with or just didn't feel right because of this whole, man up stigma. So I hid in it and it wasn't healthy, and now I'm working through that and using the skills that I learned to help me better cope. And I hope that you can too. Okay. So, outside of all of that, Kung Fu is also just a great form of exercise, right? As a workout, Kung Fu trains everything at the same time, which is another reason why I love it, because I hate working out. I'm not the kind of person who likes to lift weights. I've done it and I understand the benefit of it. I just hate doing it. It's not fun to me. I don't enjoy the pump. I don't enjoy the consistent need for maintenance and the repetitious nature of the movement. It just gets boring to me, and there's no depth to the movement, which is, I think, why I find Kung Fu so fascinating, is because the expressive nature of it. I think it's cool. If we take a look at, let's say, Tiger Crane, right? We can see that they have dynamic tension exercises which are going to work out your arms and your core, because as you're doing all those exercises, everything should be tense. You're in a low stance, you should be grabbing onto the floor, you're working out your legs. Then every movement after, right, every strike, you should technically be connecting with your whole body, which is why when I'm practicing, I tend to feel certain things in my body that I used to not feel before because of modifications that I like. When we punch, a lot of times we strike in this one little box. Even in movements like this, right? This is usually the end point for most people. I tend to turn more. I like to incorporate my core. I like to incorporate my back. I like to be able to give more and connect more with my body. So how we practice our forms really discerns how much benefit we get from the workout too. Outside of that, a lot of the drills too are pretty good, and you don't really necessarily need an additional weight or an additional force of resistance to get this benefit. So like even with weapons, we look at like doing helicopters and stuff. That's working out all of this. You're also, in a sense, you're also building shoulder dexterity. So we can get a full body workout just from this. We don't necessarily need anything else. And then the other thing too is that Kung Fu is not just a full body workout, it's mind and body. So there is that meditative component. There's also the challenge, right, of like coordinating movement. Because for a lot of people, putting together form is hard. And even today, I was just teaching like the walking patterns for Tai Chi, and one of the students was having a lot of difficulty with it. And it's just like, yes, this is the point. You're supposed to be challenged by it. Be patient with yourself. And that's another awesome thing, is that especially if you're committed, right? If you are coming in for a class because it sounds cute, like, oh, that's cool, let's try it out. That's good, hopefully you fall in love with it and can follow through and continue to take it. But if you commit to, I don't know, 2 classes a week for 2 months, you're going to see how your brain develops and learns better to process this physical movement and build this coordination and build this better sense of self in a very physical sense. Because you start learning all these moves, you're looking at your feet, you're figuring out your hands, you're trying to figure out where to go. You don't have that same coordination yet, unless you're starting from a background as somebody who's practiced karate or dancing or things like that. But if you're fresh blood to the practice, it can be challenging, and it's a hurdle to overcome. And with that consistency, you can learn to be more patient with yourself, to feel more confident in yourself, because over time you'll prove yourself wrong. Right? Oh, I don't think I'll ever be able to learn how to do all of these moves because X, Y, and Z. And then over time, You're going to prove yourself wrong because you're going to be going through these movements. You're going to be learning these movements. They'll get easier and easier. And you're building all of these skill sets while training yourself to be kind, to be more patient, to be more understanding, to listen to your body more. So if we take into account all of those things, you're truly getting a mind and body workout. And for this practice, you don't need to have a specific body type. You don't have to be overly athletic. You don't have to be anything. You just be you and use this practice to help you become the best version of yourself. With that said, I hope that you have watched this video and come out of it with a bit of an open mind, because this practice can apply to a lot of different things in an intentional way. And we have to be really, truly willing to assess our own unique needs and find a way to apply this to help us attain those goals. And of course, there's always going to be why would I do that when I can just find another resource? For me personally, I've invested so much time into this practice that it makes sense to use it for everything that I can possibly use it for. Use it as a tool to de-escalate myself, using it as a tool to exercise, using it as a tool to just have fun, using it as a sort of brain teaser. And that helps me to just go through the motions a little bit easier, because Kung Fu has so much to offer. And we have to take this open-minded and willing approach to it. Practice with intention, practice with an open mind, and be very real and honest with yourself about what you do and don't understand, and seek help from any and all sources, because there's always going to be a different way to do something. There's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be something that is not in line with maybe what you learned the first time around, but use those as tools to help. You as the student have to suss out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what fits into your beliefs, and what doesn't, and make choices accordingly to help you use your practice to meet your unique specific needs. So, with that said, I truly hope that this video can help y'all to see the wide variety of usages for this practice and open your mind to the way that you use your practice. You don't have to be a Kung Fu person to open your mind to the possibilities of what your martial art or your practice can do. And your practice could be internal, it could be a breathing exercise, meditating, it could be yoga, it could be whatever. But you have to look inward and find how far can you stretch this practice to benefit your life to the max capacity. Be well, you all, and with that said, we'll see you next week. Just wanted to put this out there. I have stuff, and you have money, so buy my stuff. I have an Etsy store, and I will attach the link down below. I am selling my t-shirts. I am selling stuff that I designed myself. Some of it is very nerdy and cool, and some of it is Kung Fu oriented. My t-shirt, my brand, if you will, is there. If you want to support me, appreciate it. If not, and you don't want to wear my logo because you're not cool like that, you can check out my other stuff. I have mugs, I have t-shirts, I have stickers, I have lots of things, and if you get something, you earn cool points. Yay. You get the privilege of owning that. So, yeah.